Hey guys, it's Hillary. Welcome back to my channel, Enneagram Coaching. I'm Hillary, your certified Enneagram life coach. Today, I'm going to be teaching you guys about the common mistypes of the type 5. I got my coffee already, you guys saw. It is so good. I made an amazing cup today. It doesn't always happen that way, I'm going to be honest. It's hit or miss with me. But today, it's so good. But I'm going to put it down because we have to get into business. Okay, so like I said, today is the video on the common mistypes of the type 5. My original idea was to ask my type 5 son, he's 17 years old, if he would sit in. Are you kidding me? Luke's here. Luke, you were laying in my bed. Say hi. Anyways, he was laying in my bed. I was like, oh, he's gonna lay up there the whole time. He's not even gonna know I'm shooting. He's not gonna wanna be petted or try and eat food while I'm shooting or anything like that. But nope, he's right here begging for me to pet him. So hopefully he'll lay down. But like I was saying, I was thinking, oh, it'd be fun to have Ethan on my channel. But then I started to think about it. I was like, what am I thinking? He's a 5 for 1. He's not gonna be on my channel. For 2, he doesn't even let me put him on my Instagram. He literally does not like social media at all. For him to be on his mom's YouTube channel, I was just thinking that's probably a definite no. So I saved myself the embarrassment and didn't even ask him. But I thought it was a good idea until I thought it through. So anyways though, okay, before I get started, guys, don't forget to like the video. It lets me know that you guys like these videos and you want me to continue making more. And then also subscribe. You guys know the drill. I have lots of videos coming your way and you don't want to miss out. So subscribe. I think there's a bell. Hit the bell. Like the video. And now let's get into what the video is about. Why do 5s mistype? But first I want to start with, why do people mistype? And to be honest, I struggled with this. Even though I knew my type, I'm a type 9 and I at different times always feel like other types, which is very common for a type 9. But the bottom line is with the Enneagram is it comes down to your motivations, why you do the things that you do, not the behaviors like the other personality tests like Myers-Briggs and Strength Finders. Those are all about behaviors. The Enneagram is about the why, the motivation. Why do you do what you do? It's a heart issue. So if you're trying to decide between a couple of the types, my first piece of advice is to look at the cores. The core fears, the core desires, the core weaknesses, even the core longings of the types that you're trying to decide between. That's where I would start. Look at those cores and really ask yourself, dig deep. What really motivates me? And a lot of times that'll help you begin to discover what your main type is. And an important thing to remember is we are a little bit of all types. There are tests out there that you can take right now and it'll give you a percentage. After you take the test, it'll give you a percentage of all the types of what came up in your personality. Which means you're a little of all types, right? That's how the Enneagram works. We are a little bit of all of them, but all of us have one main type, one dominant type, one core type, whatever way you want to call it. We only have one that motivates us. We might have some of the behaviors of all the other ones, but we only have one that is our motivation and why we do the things that we do. Another thing I want you guys to know is not everything you read is gonna 100% fit you, right? It's not like, I know there's so many cool Instagram accounts out there and different things that tell you about all the types. And a lot of times, even when I read it, I'm like, oh, I read all about the type 9 and I'm like, definitely don't relate to all of it, but I relate to some of it. And there's so many reasons why that is. Don't let it discourage you. You're not ever gonna be 100% one type. Remember, we're just looking for those motivations and those cores to start with. And to give you a more in-depth look at the type 5 and why it could look like other types, I'm going to use the 5 as the example. Say your main type is a 5. Well, then you have 2 wings, a 5-wing 4 and a 5-wing 6. So now you have a little bit of the 4 and a little bit of the 6 that you have access to. And then you have the arrows. The 5 goes towards the 8 in health and the 7 in stress. So now you've used the 5 as your main type, the 4 and the 6 as your wings, and the 8 and the 7 as your arrows. So one's your core and the other 4 you do use. You use some of those types. And so that's another reason why people can mistype, especially if they take a test when they're stressed. So say they're like, I want to find out my type, but they're under a ton of stress. So they take that test and they're like, oh, I came out as, say they are a 5 and they came out as an 8 or whatever it is. Might be because the way you were seeing the world that day was under that lens of being really stressed, and so you were just thinking of how you relate to the world in that day. And as an Enneagram teacher, I would actually tell you, answer the test. If you're going to take a test and not hire a coach, answer the test. Think of how you've been for the better part of your life. Not when you're super healthy, not when you're super stressed or going through stuff or anything like that. Think of it like, you know, as in its entirety if you can, and look at those motivations and take the test based on that, on more of an overview of your life, not where you're at in that moment on that day. Okay, to sum this up, it takes tons of work, and it's a journey, and it's a process, and it's okay, and it could take a ton of time for you to actually figure out your core type. Don't let that discourage you. Keep looking, keep digging, keep doing the work. You'll find that core type. And remember, this is just meant to be used as a tool to enhance your life, to help you to grow and grow in self-awareness, not to define who you are, right? So just keep all those things in mind, and just know it's okay if you're taking your time to find your number. Okay, so let's start with the type 5, the investigator, the observer. Those are a couple of the names we use when referring to the type 5. Some words to describe a 5 is knowledgeable, curious, innovative, researcher, technical, insightful, and calm. So those are some of the words that I would use to describe a type 5. And if you guys want more info on the type 5, I have a lot of videos where I've covered, like I have an interview with a type 5, I've done the wings video, I've done different videos covering the type 5. I'll link 1 or 2 of those down below for you guys, but I can't cover any more than that because we have so much to get into today, right? I have to take the 5 and I have to compare it to all the other types. So this video, we don't want it to be an hour long, so I will let you guys just choose to go watch other videos to learn more about the type 5. But let's go ahead and get started with the type 5 versus the type 1. Okay, so this one can happen. It's not super common, but it can happen. They're both in the competency triad along with the 3. And what this means is they both, well, all 3 of them really, but we're just discussing the 5 and the 1 right now. They care about being perceived as competent and feeling competent. Those are really important to both types. The difference though is competence means something different for the 5 and the 1. For the 5, it means knowledge-based, and for the 1, it means being right. So for the type 5, that means they will use logic and analysis to solve an issue, very knowledge-based. One thing I focus on when I'm helping someone decide between a 5 and a 1 is energy. What does their energy look like? That a lot of times can help us because 5s get depleted easily, right? They have great boundaries around their time because too much work or too many people depletes their energy. But the 1s will push through when they're tired, and they'll do whatever they need to do because they want to look like the good person. And while they're pushing through to do it, they might even get resentful, but they'll still do it because they want things to be perfect and look perfect. I've read 1s want to perfect the world and 5s want to learn more about the world, and that's something that makes them both different. Okay, so let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 2. This is not a common mistyping. 5s tend to avoid people. If they have, they'll let people they trust in, but you have to earn that trust. And 2s tend to love people, right? They're not trying to avoid them. They want to do for others so that they can feel that love. A big difference is 5s are emotionally detached and can be loners at times, but the 2 are super people oriented and are way more expressive than a type 5. 2s, they go by feelings. 5s, what do they go by? Facts. And the last thing is 2s move towards people, right? I already said that a little, I already kind of said that. And 5s move away from people. 5s are in the withdrawn stance, so they definitely move away from people. And so that's something that is different about both of them. Okay, so that's all I got on that one. I feel like it's, because it's not common, we don't need to go over it a ton. So let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 3. So this one's interesting because my kids are type 5 and type 3. I have a kid that's turning 20 in a few weeks. Oh my goodness. He's a type 3, and then my type 5 is 17, and they are very different. So this is not a common mistyping. I've already done the type 3 mistyping video, and I shared about having a type 3 as a son and a type 5 as a son. If you want to hear more about that, go watch the video. I'll link it. I don't know, where do we put it? Right there, but it's the type 3 mistypes video. So let's dig into what I didn't cover in that video, which is type 5s are all about the process, not exactly about the goal. The goal is not as important to them. They want the goal, but it's not as important as the process and the journey and figuring things out. And 3s, they're all about the goal. Success, achievement, they want to get it done, they're efficient, and they are about the goal. So that makes them different. 5s will go wherever knowledge and ideas take them. They are, like my type 5 son, he hates it if somebody interrupts him, especially like he'll be working on something for hours on end, and I need to ask him a question, and he has explained it to me that when I interrupt his process of researching or whatever he's doing in the moment, especially if he's working on something important, it's hard for him to be almost like ripped out of it, you know, deal with whatever I'm having to ask him and then get back in it. It really, really throws him off and is really hard for him because he's like been down. He started with a thought or whatever, and he's been going down rabbit trails and rabbit trails and rabbit trails, and it's really hard for them to, you know, break out of that and then get back in it. Sometimes they stay in the process of, you know, figuring out all of this stuff for months on end. And usually they'll stay in whatever it is until they've exhausted the subject or they've exhausted themselves. So, and that's very true for my type 5 son. And like I said, 3s, to them, hitting the goal means success. And so that's what they're after. I know that it's a common perception that 3s are all about how they look and 5s would not care at all. I actually don't agree with that. I think that's subjective. Now, my type 3, yes. If he's like going to work or, you know, he golfs, and so, you know, he will look sharp for all of that. But his everyday, he kind of doesn't care. And if people come over, it's not a big deal to him. And maybe it has to do with his confidence, and he's just like, it is what it is. And he feels like he looks great already. So I think that's why I say it's subjective of what they think looks good versus my 5. Now, his everyday, he's just kind of like, you know, like in his everyday life, being in our house, in our home and everything, he's totally relaxed and doesn't need to look good or care about it. But as soon as somebody's coming over or he has to go somewhere, he is all about, you know, making sure he looks his absolute best. So I think it can be subjective is what I'm saying. It's not something we can pinpoint like, oh, 3s always have to look amazing and 5s, oh, they look messy. That's a total lie. And so I think it's a misconception between the two. So anyways, I went down a rabbit trail myself there. So let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 4. Okay, so this one, super common mistyping. And I did a video on mistypings of the type 4 already, and I went into this in great detail there. I'll go into it in good detail here, but I'm definitely not really sharing the same thing. So I would go watch that video if you are a 5 or a 4 and you are wondering which one you are. I'll link that one down below too. Why is this common? I think a lot of times it has to do with their wings. A 5-wing 4 and a 4-wing 5. Those are the two that really, really, really have a hard time identifying which one they are. A type 5-wing 4 sexual or 1-to-1, however you want to say it, can look like a type 4. So I think that's where the confusion can come in, because this type can be more creative, emotional, and a little bit more people-oriented than other type 5s. But my advice is always go back to the motives. If you're wondering if you're a 5 or a 4, look at those motives. So I would look at those cores of the type 5 and the type 4. If you're a 5, your core desire is to be capable and competent. If you're type 4, your core desire is to be special and unique. And so look at those if you're trying to decide between the two, plus everything else I've mentioned. Another similarity is they're both in the withdrawn stance. And so that can lead to confusion, which means they both move away from people, but for different reasons. The type 4 moves away from people, but they might want the person to come towards them. And the 5, they move away from people because they're feeling overwhelmed and maybe even depleted by people. So they definitely don't want you to come towards them. So that's the difference within a similarity of the two. Okay, and if you are still struggling, look at those arrows. The arrows of the 5 and the 4 are different, and so look at where you go in stress and where you go in health. And the 5, they go towards the 8 in health, which can mean, you know, they become loyal and brave and assertive and determined. And in stress, a 5 moves towards a 7, which means they can become scattered, restless, and impulsive. And the 4 moves towards the 2 in stress, which means you're gonna see more people-pleasing, neediness, and maybe even some pride. And they move towards the 1 in health, which means more organized, structured, and self-disciplined. And so look at the arrows on where you go. Where do you go in stress and health? And that might help you also land on your core type. Okay, so that one is a little bit longer than all the other ones, but that's because that one is the one that is the most mistyped. So let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 6. Okay, so these two can mistype because of their wings. You have the 5-wing 6 and the 6-wing 5. And so I definitely have heard of people mistyping. It's not as common, but it definitely can happen. And they might also mistype because they're both in that thinking triad. You have the 3 triads, the heart, the gut, and the thinking, or the head. The type 5 and 6 are both in that head thinking triad, which means it's the first instinct that they use. And I've heard that it's more common for a type 6 to mistype as a type 5 than a 5 to mistype as a type 6. Sixes are more linear and analytical in their thinking, and they want to troubleshoot so they can have plans and procedures and actions in place in case anything goes wrong. Fives are non-linear in their thinking because they want to figure out for themselves. What is it? What do they believe? It doesn't bother them to shake things up. A big difference between the 5 and the 6 is 5s, they trust their own minds. Because why? They don't think everyone else is that knowledgeable. So they trust their own knowledge before they trust anybody else's. And 6s, they have a hard time trusting their own mind. They'll probably trust other people and methods before they'll trust themselves first. So those are some differences, but let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 7. They definitely have things in common. They're both in that thinking triad too, because the 5, 6, and 7 are in the thinking head triad, but this is not a common mistyping. I will say the 5 moves to the 7 in stress. So if a 5 is stressed, they're going to take on some of those 7 average to unhealthy qualities, like I said earlier, scattered and stuff like that. And then the 7 moves towards the 5 in health. And so they're going to take on some of those healthy qualities of the 5. So it'll ground them a little better. But I don't think that leads to people mistyping. Their minds work very differently. A 5's mind is more like a computer, right? They have tons of files in there. They can access the files at any time. A 5 is going to want to think about things before they talk. They're not necessarily going to want to just like blah, 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 blah first. I think the 7 will talk before they think, even though they are in that thinking triad. And the 5s, they can compartmentalize really well, kind of like those files I was talking about. They can put everything in its compartment. The 7 is more like spaghetti. Everything's going together. I know a type 7, and he actually did a video, if you want to watch the type 7 video. He told me in that video that at any given time, he's probably reading 5 to 7 books. And so he's like, I can't just stick to one book. Wow, that would feel boring. But 5 to 7, that feels great. That to him seems normal, because 7s, they move around from idea to idea. They can struggle to stay in that one place at any given time. They mostly want to like jump around, and to them that feels organized and normal. And the last thing I would say here is a 7 is optimistic. They are actually in an optimistic triad with the 2 and the 9. And the 5s, they're just going to be more cynical about it. All right, so let's move on to the type 5 versus the type 8. So this one's not common, but it definitely can happen because 5s move to the 8 in health. They have that arrow together, which I've already covered it. You know, it helps them be assertive and become more determined. And the 8 can move towards that 5 under stress. They can start to withdraw to plan and research things. Maybe, I don't even think it's like research what's stressing them out all the time. Sometimes it is, but it could just be research or getting their minds off of whatever is stressing them out and go somewhere else so that they don't have to deal with the stress. And I'm really just thinking about my husband who's a type 8. When he is stressed, all of a sudden, he's like super into like real estate and researching it and like finding a new house for us and finding all that. But he's all into the research. We don't even have to actually move or do anything like that. And he's not even talking about moving. He's researching. He's like, all of a sudden he wants to, and usually it's, I think we'll build a house. And he's researching all what you would need to build a house and all that kind of stuff. And so that's usually a red flag to me of like, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? So that definitely helps me understand him better. And I would say it's easier for an 8 to mistype as a 5 versus a 5 mistype as an 8, because the 8 is assertive, but when they're under stress, they can withdraw, like I was just saying, and do that. And so they might actually think like, maybe I am a 5. But a 5, even though they go towards the 8 and they can become more assertive, they don't have that energy, that presence that fills the room like an 8 would. So that's a big difference. Their energy is different. All right, so let's move on to the last one, guys. It's type 5 versus the type 9. Okay, so this one, not super common. If at all there is a mistyping, it's more common for a 9 to mistype as a 5 versus a 5 to mistype as a 9. Because 9s, one thing that they do love that is like a 5 is they love learning. They can withdraw, you know, they're in that same stance as the type 5, and so they'll withdraw just like the 5 would. And they fear obligations that people put on them. And so when you put all those things together, a 9 might feel like a 5, but a difference is a 9, they do not know who they are a lot of times. It's hard for a 9 to pinpoint exactly who they are. Again, the 9 is at the top of the circle, and they can feel like all types at any given time. We can merge with others. We can hear their side. We're very good mediators, because why? We've ignored who we are for so long because we've always been listening to other people, which is good and bad, right? Because the 9s do need to know who they are, but it's tougher for them. Versus the 5, they definitely know who they are. They do not struggle with that like the 9 does. And for the 2, boundaries are very different. 9s, they don't have a ton of boundaries. They need boundaries. They need to work on those boundaries. I'm talking to myself, but they don't have a ton of boundaries. 9s are so approachable and they have a hard time putting boundaries in place. The 5s, they have strong interpersonal boundaries. They they do not have a problem putting boundaries down. Their time and their energy is very important to them. They understand it. And so they need boundaries in order to preserve that. So they don't have a hard time with boundaries like the 9 does. Last thing is 9s are super trusting of people. 5s are more superstitious and cynical of people. So that is a big difference between the two. I know my friends always tell me like, you're too trusting. Because I do. I do believe the best in everybody and trust right away, but that is very different. So if you're trying to decide between the two, look and see how trust is to you. If you give it away easily or if you don't. All right guys, so we are done. The type 5 mistypes video. I went through all the types. I hope this video helped you guys. Let me know in the comments below if you were struggling with your type and if this helped you, or if you are still struggling, let me know. I still have to cover type 6, 7, and 8 mistypes video. But if you're any other types, I've covered the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, and now the 5, and the 9 video. So I already have those out there. Go find those, watch those. I think it's super important for everybody to watch all 9 videos once they're all done, just so that you really, really understand who you are and so you can confidently know what your core type is. So, but yeah, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that, and subscribe. That's so important. We're almost to 3,000 guys. I'm so excited. You guys are amazing. Like, I just adore all of you. I try and read all the comments. There are so many comments that are so kind and so nice, and I have to say I love getting to know you guys and hearing your heart. And I have the best subscribers because you guys really share your heart with me and with others, and you help others by doing that. I really appreciate that. So that's been a really wonderful gift of doing this channel. But anyways, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at Hillary_McCaskey_coaching. I also have another Instagram that I've started posting on that I opened last year and then just let it die off. But I'm posting on it again. It's going to be a real thing, guys. It's called Enneagram Coaching. And it's hard because I'm a type 9 and finding the energy to do all this. I'm not going to lie. It's a struggle, but I'm pushing through and I'm doing it. And the last place you can find me is enneagramandcoaching.com. If you want to go look at what I offer, I have a bunch of stuff on there. But yeah, that's all I have today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are awesome. And until next time, bye guys.